Hello, and today I'm here with Amy Yonick. Amy is a certified end-of-life coach, educator, and death doula. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us. So, Amy has a very interesting background, and I really wanted her to take us through that because I think it's an interesting story of how she ended up here, and it talks a lot about, or speaks to a lot about how she is as a person, and about how she is today. So,
Well, I certainly didn't see myself landing here in the death work.
mhm.
And I've been trained as a life coach. I've been a life coach for over 20 years. And I've been in the fitness industry and nutrition. And when COVID hit, it very suddenly closed down my business.
Mhm.
And I went about a year without working, not knowing what was next for me. And my husband recommended that I go seek out some kind of volunteer opportunity. So I
Okay.
did. And what I found was hospice. And it was very unexpected, but it felt like the right thing. So I got trained to be a hospice volunteer. And I sat bedside with people at end of life for several months until my husband and I went on vacation. And while he was getting a tea, I was looking for a novel. And the one that I found, the main character was a death doula. And like a bolt of lightning went through me. And I said, well, what is a death doula? And I spent some time on vacation researching what a death doula is, what a death doula does, and how I can become a death doula. And so that was December of 21. In January of 22, I started my certification to become an end-of-life coach, an educator, and death doula, and started my business in 2023.
Oh,
Haven't looked
great. Yeah, so that's interesting. So tell us, what is a death doula?
First and foremost, a death doula is non-medical. That's
Mhm.
an important point to make, is that there's no clinical work, there's no medical work. I don't administer medicine or um, blood pressure and nothing at all that
Mhm.
is medically related. And what I do is, what we do is provide spiritual and emotional support to the individual who's dying and also to their family, to
Mhm.
help people to understand what they can expect as their loved one is going through the dying process. We don't understand that, and it can be very scary. It can turn people away. It can change how they look at themselves when they're addressing their own end of life chapters. And so to be able to bring some peace and some
Mhm.
understanding to what's happening at the end of life can change the trajectory of how people see the dying process and how they look at it for generations to come, so that it's not so scary. So we provide um, legacy projects, talk
Mhm.
about life review, just be a spiritual and healing presence. There's no more curing at this point in the process, but there is still healing to be happened. So emotional healing, relationship healing, talking about, anything that you might be holding on to that might not allow you to have peace at the end of life. So being somebody who can listen open-heartedly, um, being of service. The
Mhm.
word doula is means a woman who serves, although there are many male death doulas.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people that do this line of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, people talk about this new thing. It's
Yeah.
not new. Yes, it's definitely new to me, but I mean, we've been doing this for hundreds of years, generations.
Mhm.
We look back 100 years ago and people were dying in our homes, before the funeral industry started, taking over that.
Mhm.
So grandma and grandpa were, in the what was called the living room. Before that, it was not. But family would come over and spend time with our loved ones who were dying,
Mhm.
and we would take care of them ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really just reemerging.
Right. So how do people find you, like, to know that this service is available? Because it was by chance that you and I met, and I'm
Mm.
very glad that we did. But I had no idea about death doulas and your work.
Yeah, I mean, really, the way we find anything now these days is you can Google. death doula in my area.
Yeah.
But there are directories out there. The directory, where I got my certification, the Conscious Dying Collective. There's doula, I think it's deathdoulas.com. There's a lot of directories out there that will share local doulas, the National End of Life Doula Association. So there's a lot of ways that you can find.
Right, but what if they had no no idea that you even existed? Is it usually like a referral type thing because someone knows that, maybe an adult child's having a really hard time because maybe they didn't have a great relationship with their parents and they want to resolve things. So is that maybe
not uncommon?
Yeah.
That is definitely something that I help people with, specifically in the workshop that I do, that is not necessarily related to the actual end of life process, but it's getting you prepared for that final chapter. But, repairing or resolving a relationship is something that's really important for people as they're looking at their final chapter, because a lot of people have anxiety about either not forgiving or not being forgiven. There's a lot of estranged relationships that we might encounter over the course of our lives.
Yeah.
So that can bring a lot of anxiety to somebody at the end of life.
Yeah. So do you usually, when they find you, do you usually meet with them, with both the people at the same time and try to bring them together? Or is it more one-on-one with one person and hoping that the person that maybe, dying, that they will be open to speak to you as well?
So the client is the person at end of life for me.
Okay.
So even if the family is the one who has hired me, I'm there to support and advocate for the dying person.
Yeah.
If they're able to speak and they're open to having those conversations, then absolutely I will help to mediate that and to help make that happen. So it's for the, what does the dying person want? And that's one of the reasons, if we can back up a little bit, one of the reasons why I do this workshop is so that we can help when you get to that final chapter of life, not have those issues. Like if you can, that's the part of the coaching piece that really speaks to me, is to be proactive in our lives so that when crisis comes, we don't have to be reactive while we're trying to navigate through all of these heavy, intense emotions because a loved one is sick or actually dying. So if you can have these conversations now, regardless of your health status, having these conversations now helps you to get really clear about what's important to you. And then you can start living in alignment with that. So if it's important to you to clean up a relationship, through the workshop, we can help you to create an action plan to make that happen.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the workshop, because I know my perspective on the workshop and I have not taken it yet. And I do want to take it because when I tell people about it, I tell people it's really not about death. It's really about living. Right. And I think that's really the unique piece of it, because it's things like cleaning things up, like you said. So talk a little bit about your workshop, and how it works. Because I think it's really a great thing. It's a great tool.
It's a virtual 6-week program. And the basis of the program is that on that first class, I kind of assign a death date. So if you were in my class and we were starting today, I would let you know that on August 21st, you will die. And that is the premise for the entire program. So we kind of separate your life into 5 different areas: your physical comfort care, physical environment, and then your emotional life, how you relate to emotions yourself, how you relate to emotions within your relationships, and which relationships need repair. Oftentimes it turns out to be your relationship with yourself. We have the spiritual aspect of your life. Like what does spirituality mean to you? It could be religion, could be spirituality, could be a little bit of both. But how do you nurture that so that as you do move closer to the final day, which is inevitable, you have established a relationship with that spirituality, which is going to be very important when you get to that final chapter, those final months, weeks, days. We do the practical, go over the practical aspect of end of life wishes, like your healthcare advocate and your estate planning. I have somebody come in who is an expert in that and help everybody understand what are the bare minimums of what they should have as far as their affairs being in order. But then we talk about after death care. How do you want your body to be disposed of? What kind of life celebration do you want? Or is it a traditional funeral? But people get really creative. And then finally, and this is probably my favorite, is the legacy portion. How do you want your people to remember you? How do you want to stay alive in the hearts and minds of the people that you loved? And we create legacy projects. And so once we go through this process under this understanding that I only have 90 days left to live, all the small stuff fades away. All the crap that, we put too much time and energy into, all of a sudden it doesn't mean as much anymore because we have this urgency, because now time is really limited. Even though we understand that time is limited somewhere in the back of our head, in our minds, having this death date assigned to you really brings it to the forefront. So people start to react in a different way and start to really process what their priorities are, how they can start living in alignment with them now, so that when that ultimate last day comes, it can be without regret, or as little regret as possible, reducing the anxiety and fear, and having an experience that is of gratitude for the life that you've lived, and for the people that you've loved, and for your relationship with yourself. And that's why I named my business Leaving in Love, because I want to help people get to that place where they leave in love with the life that they had, in love with the people that they had, and in love with themselves.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work, right? I mean, people really have to be looking inward to be part of this workshop, right?
Most definitely. There's homework, there's reflection questions, there's there's what's called a vision map, where we get very clear about how things are right now in your current reality, and then look at how you would like them to be as a vision. And if you've got only 90 days to make some changes, what are the action steps that will get you moving from where you are now to where you want to be? And that's really the coaching piece right there. And, as you start checking off those action steps, you start to see, oh, wow, if I'm going to honor these priorities, whether or not I die on August 21st, my death date, things are going to get better. I mean, I haven't lost anybody yet on the death dates, which is good. So, they go on, they move, they continue living, but now they're living in alignment with their priorities. And life just gets kind of cool when you do that. Like, you're doing the things that are most important to you with the people who are most important to you. And the discord that a lot of people are living with now just kind of fades away.
Yeah. Do you see some people that have gone through it have made significant life changes because of that?
Huge.
Because like getting rid of the toxins, the toxic people in their life. And so I think for a lot of people, it's probably hard to come to in one way, right? Because they know they have to look inward and maybe they're not ready for that. I think you have to be ready in order to take the workshop.
Yes. Yes. I mean, or you at least have to be willing to have the conversations. In that first class, it's really important to create a safe environment for people to be brave. So I work really hard to do that. It's a very intimate group of people, and we have, what I call sacred agreements, where, we're not there to judge. We're not there to fix. We're not there to, give advice. We're truly there to witness one another and to have this similar human experience. Because if we're learning anything from this small, intimate group, is that we feel seen. It's like, oh, you experience that too. I experienced that. And now there's this connection, and you don't feel so alone in your feelings of fear and anxiety, or something that comes up a lot is there's a lot of estranged relationships out there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come face to face with your mortality, even if you're just pretending, and then you consider, wow, I haven't talked to so and so in 2 years. If I've only
Mm-hmm.
got 90 days left to live, do I want to clean that up?
Yeah.
So, one of the bigger things that happens from this workshop is that relationships are repaired,
Mm-hmm.
or people come to resolution with the fact that that relationship is not going to be repaired,
Mm-hmm.
and they have found peace in that. There's a lot of boundary setting. There's a lot of honoring oneself.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get into a conversation about just because it's blood doesn't mean that you have to put yourself in that relationship and maintain it. If it's not
Mm-hmm.
healthy,
Right.
then don't abandon yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that has to be hard on people to come to that. Right. But a good release too, when they realize, okay, it is okay. Right.
Yeah, and
Um,
to see that other people experience that, it's like,
right.
oh, so like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a
Yep.
bad person because I'm choosing not to be in relationship with this
Yep.
person who I'm supposed to be, just because it's blood.
Right. Yeah. So, and they're small groups, right? The workshops are small groups.
Yeah.
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 Which is good.
Anywhere from 3 to 6.
Okay. And you do them a few times a year or like quarterly?
Quarterly. Yep. I'll also do them privately. I've done private classes with couples.
Okay.
Yeah. So, spouses who want to, not only get their practical affairs in order, but they
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about the other things, the emotional part, the spiritual part.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So now I want to go back to you had mentioned before about how you advocate for the person that is going through end of life. So what does that involve?
So if the person again is able to speak and share with
Mm-hmm.
me what their wishes are,
Yeah.
um, they could be out of alignment with what the family wants for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for them to be able to express their wishes, if they can get them written down, and part of their advanced directives. That's an important piece of it too. And then to
Mm-hmm.
help them to find somebody who will advocate for them as as a family member or a loved one, so that when they're going through medical choices that they have to make, that
Mm-hmm.
they're able to have agency over their own body, and that if they haven't shared their wishes with their family, that their family does come to understand what's most important to them so that they can support them. Because if they haven't had the conversations, then that can create a lot of chaos within the family, and then the person winds up not getting what they actually want because they haven't expressed their wishes.
Okay. Now, are you meeting these people at different stages? Like, are meeting some of these people end of life that could be, it's within days, or are you also meeting people that might be 6 months out? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it just depends on the individual and what their current situation is.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And then, so a lot, if it's very end of life, that it's, going to be quickly, is that something your hospice people are reaching out to you because they know you and know that you'll be a good resource?
I have worked with several clients because I've been a hospice volunteer with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as of right now, we haven't got to the point, at least with the hospices that I volunteer with, where they are willing to share the service of
Okay.
end of life doula. Unfortunately, I know there are some out there in other states that are 100% on board and see this as a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been a hospice volunteer. I have worked with a family, and when their loved one has got to the end of life, they have hired me as the doula.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then my relationship with hospice at that point ends. I no longer am the volunteer. I am their doula, and I am there purely for the family.
Okay. Um, and what does that look like in terms of like, time? Like, is it like, are you scheduling time with them to come, or how's that you
Yeah,
scheduling it?
it's whatever the family wants.
Okay.
I've come in and I've sat with. I'm thinking of one family in particular where, hospice has said, We're, probably days out. So I've sat down with the family. We've talked about what each individual family member understands is happening with their loved one. Uh, I'm a big fan of journaling, writing your feelings down, visualizations. And so I have several that I will take a family through so that they can separately start to process their feelings, but then come together and share what they learned within themselves with their family. And this creates a cohesive unit. So
Yeah.
everybody's starting to understand what the other person is going through. I have some videos that will help them see exactly, well, what could happen with their loved one physically, the sounds, the smells, just what's happening to the body as it transitions to death, and what things are normal and what you can expect to happen so that it's not so scary. Um, and then, I've done anointing rituals with a family so that we anoint the body and the family is standing around the body. And sometimes we do it after death. Sometimes we do it before death while the person is not verbal, but it's an opportunity to help the family start the grieving process. So by anointing the body, we are there together, honoring the physical part of their loved one, and it just gives them an opportunity to acknowledge what's happening and to be present with what's happening. And it's very healing, and it does start the grieving process.
Yeah, so it's been so much involved in this, right? So what does your training look like to get here? Because it just seems like there's so much that goes into it that people wouldn't think about, or at least I wouldn't think about. So what's the
Yeah,
training look
so
like?
the program that I went through, I was there for a year, and that gave me certification as the conscious dying coach, which helps us to, there's a lot of conversation and helping people to understand what they can expect. But it's also, there's a lot of, so yeah, there's a lot of things to do. Like you do an anointing, you can hold a hand, you can do ritual, but there's also a lot of being. And I think that's the part that is missing from, what we understand about what's needed during this process is there's not a whole lot to do. The physical body knows how to die. So we don't have to really do anything. We can reposition, we can keep the body clean and dry. Those are doing things, but the being things are really valuable. And I don't know that you can, I guess you can train somebody on how to do that, but
Right.
it's something that you have to practice. And I think intuition comes into it a lot. So just understanding the healing presence of somebody holding space and sending love, and allowing for all the emotions that are happening between all the different family members and loved ones, and to be able to kind of take a step back and just, I'm sitting here with my arms, like holding a space for whatever is happening to just be. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to change. This is what's happening. And we need to find a way to work through it. I mean, how often in our lives do we just allow ourselves to process and allow a feeling and emotion to move through us without having to, oh, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. Like let's
Yeah.
deflect, no, let's be. So I think there's a lot of the training was about how to be a compassionate, understanding, healing presence. And then, some of the training, the workshop that I do is actually, it is originally called the best 3 months. And we're trained on that, and then given the freedom to create and make it our own. So I have done that. I have taken the bones of the best 3 months program and made it my version, which is the What Matters Most workshop.
Yeah, which I think is great. I've heard, rave reviews. I had a friend that did it with you,
Yeah.
and really got a lot out of it. So I definitely recommend it to people. Um, so let me see. I have a couple of questions here um, that I want to ask. So, okay, I guess what are some, practical steps that individuals can take to communicate their end of life wishes effectively with their loved ones? Like what
Yeah.
because I would think that could be a difficult thing. My mom and I always joke about it, because it's the way we deal with it, right? And I think because we're not dealing with it, right? Um,
That's the nervous. It's like, some people laugh at weddings. It's like, it's the way to get that nervous energy out.
right,
Um, it's certainly not disrespect in any way.
right.
Um, so it's a hard conversation. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
this is what I'm doing is a hard sell.
mm-hmm,
People don't, they're not lining up to talk about their death.
right.
So it's, why should you have this conversation
Mm-hmm,
is, something that you want to consider. And, I think our generation where our parents are getting, towards the closer to the end of their lives.
mm-hmm,
And, we've got children who are, in, their 20s and 30s.
mm-hmm,
Both of them need to have these conversations. But with your parents, or my experience is, oh, I don't want to be a burden.
mm-hmm,
Well, the best way for you not to be a burden is to have this conversation with me so that I know exactly what your end of life wishes are. And I don't have to stress when I'm feeling highly emotional about what your end of life wishes are. Like
mm-hmm,
that's how you cannot be a burden to me. So it's a gift to
right.
give your loved ones a conversation about what's important to you. So how do you start that conversation? I would say um, to start by asking when is a good time for us to do that. So like you're
Mm-hmm,
not just running in and hey
right.
mom, let's sit down and talk about your end of life wishes. Give your loved ones some time to process the fact that you want to have this conversation and
Mm-hmm,
let them know that this is important to you. Like this is how you can be as least a burden as possible is for us to have this conversation. And I know it's going to be, parts of it will be challenging, but I can tell you this, Karen, it can bring people so much closer together by
mm-hmm,
having these conversations. It opens up a lot. But
yeah.
to ask in advance, I really want to have some conversations about what your end of life wishes are. When
Mm-hmm,
would be a good time to do that? And give them a couple of choices, so
right.
that, they're not, oh, I don't know, I'm busy. Let's do it next week. Would Monday or Tuesday be better for you? And really try to
Mm-hmm,
nail that down. Let's have a cup of tea and have some questions available that,
right.
you want to start with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's beneficial for both parties, right? Because you say you have parents and you have the kids, like so we are the sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Right in the middle. And we're thinking about this stuff too, because we have kids, right? So I guess if you're approaching a way as well, maybe saying like, this is for me too, because I need to think about these things too, because as we know, tomorrow is never promised, right? It's a gift.
Regardless of your age.
Right. Yeah,
It's,
regardless. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So, in giving, in receiving this gift from your parents and
mm-hmm,
helping them to understand how much it can help you, you will see the value of giving that gift back to your kids. Because
right.
I've had participants in my program who have had both experiences with their parents. Like their
Mm-hmm,
parents did nothing. They had no idea what they wanted for end of life wishes. It was stressful. The family was fighting. This sibling
mm-hmm,
thought this sibling thought that. Well, we had lunch and she said cremated. Well, we had dinner. She said no. It's chaos at the end of life. And then I've had people that have said, my parents and I went through everything together. We had such a beautiful
mm-hmm,
experience and we had a life celebration and she picked out what she wanted to wear. And it's a completely different experience. And
right.
that's where the change through generations can happen. Because if you bring a child, like a younger child, into that more positive experience, they're not going to have the same kind of fear and anxiety about dying.
Right.
about talking about it. If you bring them into the conversation in an age appropriate way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very smart to do that because, it's, I think as people, we have evolved, right? Like we're talking about more things than ever before, things that our parents' generation would never think about talking about, and probably, quite frankly, are horrified
Yeah.
that we talk so much about,
Mhm.
different things, whether it be death, money, things that have usually been off the table, right? And now people are more open. I don't know. I think it's healthier.
Gender equality. I mean,
And,
but it's
yeah,
important. When has not talking about something ever helped?
right, right.
I
Yeah,
mean, the more we suppress, the more anxious we are. And
yeah,
I truly feel like that's where this anxiety about death is because it's a suppressed conversation that we all want to have. I
yeah,
think, about I do the death over drafts.
right,
And when people come, it's like, oh, this is a place where I have permission to talk about my loved one, my grief, my end of life wishes, like
right,
everything. And we just don't give people a platform and a safe environment to have these conversations because society just does not allow for it.
right. Yep. No, I think it's much better. So I think you've given a great overview today about being a death doula. And I do want to, after we speak, put in information about how people can find you and especially your workshop, because I think that workshop is really something special that people really could, use. And I want them to be able to learn even more about, that as well. So I'll definitely put that in the notes below. But what is the best way for people to reach you, to find out about you and all your services?
My website is leavinginlove.com.
Okay.
Anybody can reach out to me at amy@leavinginlove.com or just go onto the website and you can sign up for a complimentary conversation with me and you can ask me anything.
Oh, that's
I
great.
love I love talking about, having this conversation. It's important. And I think people find that it's not as hard as they might think it is.
Right.
You just, have a way to get started.
Right. Well, and I think you have such a nice way about you as well that you help people open up,
Mhm.
right? And that in itself, I think, is a gift
Thank you.
that you definitely have. So I think that's wonderful. So
Thank
this is great. Is there anything else that you want to touch upon before we sign off, or
Just be brave.
be brave?
To whoever's listening out here, just be brave. Have these conversations. I
Mhm.
Talking about death will not kill you.
Right.
You're going to die one day. We don't know what day it's going to be. It could be
Hmm.
tomorrow, it could be in 10 years, you don't know, but why not be prepared? We prepare and plan with so much time and energy
Hmm.
in birthdays and anniversaries. And I mean, the beginning of life, if you look at how much time and energy we put into the birthing experience
Hmm.
and the new nursery and the baby shower and the people that come together to help support the family when a new child is brought in. I mean, just everybody floods to celebrate and honor that experience. The end of your life deserves the same kind of reverence. Plan for it. Decide how you want to honor the life. Be really specific about your end of life wishes and tell your loved ones what they are so that you can have as peaceful an experience as possible. And so can they. And
Hmm.
then when it's over, and I get goosebumps talking about this, when it's over, it's, of course, you're sad. It's never okay to lose somebody that you love,
Hmm.
but you can have joy celebrating the life that was and that you were a part of it. So just have the conversations. And if you don't know where to start, I'm happy to help.
That's great. Well, thank you again, Amy. This was wonderful, and I can't wait to share this with everyone.
Thanks, Karen.
All right, you take care.